Okay. So once again, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. And today is 26th of February. And as we have promised by Association of Nurse Executives India, this year we are going to review WHO safety curriculum topic-wise. The first topic in January was what is patient safety, and in case you have not been able to please visit Annie's YouTube channel and you will be able to view that recording again. So once again, we are going to discuss topic number 2: why apply human factors in patient safety. So just before starting this session, I saw one message in my WhatsApp. So they said, tell people only those things that matter to them and that is relevant to them. So that's what we are trying to do. We are trying to make the curriculum easier to understand and relevant to our Indian healthcare system. So, because Annie is committed to zero harm, and it's very heartening that that I think there are a lot of students joining our session. Thank you so much because you are the future of healthcare in India, and patient safety is relevant, was relevant yesterday, today it is relevant, tomorrow it is relevant, and that is why we all are in healthcare. We do not want to harm our patients. So thank you for joining, and you can tell your friends that in case they are not able to today, they can always catch up on the recording, and this is also being streamed live on Facebook, so they can catch up on Facebook right now. Thank you so much. So once again, a very warm welcome. So we are today. I'm very happy to also announce that Association of Nurse Executives India is doing this under the Annie Patient Safety Fellowship Program. There are 8 fellows who have been associated with this from September last year, and we will continue till September. And that's next cohort is expected to start in June 2022, and we are doing in collaboration with Patient Safety Movement Foundation from USA. So why apply human factors? So this is what we are going to discuss today. So understanding the relationship between human factors and patient safety is a must for all nursing students and nurses, and that's why we decided to go through a process of understanding the entire curriculum set up by WHO World Health Organization. So to start the session, I'm going to run a small video, and before that, I think I would run a poll. So I'm going to, uh, you know, send you a poll. Okay, I think I'm not able to. One second. Just give me 1 minute. I just have to edit the poll for a moment. Okay, I think we are almost done. Just give me a minute. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes,
Hello?
ma'am.
You're
Yes.
not seeing the screen, no?
No, we can only see the video.
Okay, great. So I'm just launching the poll. What happened again? It is showing the same thing, question number 5. Okay, please excuse me. You can skip the question number 5. I would like you to answer these few questions on your screen. On your screen, we have 4 questions. Please answer. The 5th one, please disregard. Please, on the screen, you are seeing the questions on your mobile, on your laptop, you would be seeing. So please start answering them. I haven't got any answers so far. You can select one response. All right. So we have a, complete yes for human factors are included in nursing education. And during training in hospital, we have 77 percentage. And human factors are considered during RCAs and CAPAs. We have 59 percentage, and there's 24 percentage no, and the rest are not sure. Even for training, they are not very sure. Uh, so thank you very much. The other two were supposed to be given after the session. Unfortunately, I mixed them together, so you got all of it together. So apologies for that. So I'm going to close the session now. I would really love to ask you at the end of it that did you know the things that we are discussing in this session? At the end of the session, we will ask. So thank you so much. So glad to know nursing education talks about human factors. Great. So I'm going to ask all of you in the chat box, just put at least one thing that comes to your mind when you hear human factors, because you all said that it is part of education and it is part of you know training. So can you type out something that comes to your mind on human factors? What comes to your mind? Okay, Priyanka says empathy, sensitivity. Okay, let's get some more answers. We have almost 60 people in the class. Thank you so much. And autonomy, Khairiam, accountability, Shantirani. Okay, some more words, some more words. Compassion, responsibility. Okay, okay, okay. So it'll be interesting to know that knowledge. Okay, Kanakam is telling knowledge. Kanakam sounds like my name, huh? Thankam. Okay. All right, dignity. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, my dear friend. So let's see whether you will learn new words once we finish this session. So I would like you to hear Annie's story and think that whether this can happen in our hospitals also. Just give me a moment. Let me run that.
The patient care technician came to me and she told me, I need to let you see this screen. And she showed me the glucometer.
She saw the word high flash on the screen, and that's what she assumed was the result that she had.
She's like, I just feel like my blood sugar is really high. She's like, I don't feel good. I know my body.
And so there wasn't really any suspicion that it would be low. And so when this error message comes up, it kind of confirmed that.
So we rechecked her blood sugar and the same thing popped up. So I covered her with some insulin and I called the physician. And by the time I got her back in bed, she became like non-responsive.
Ended up being a rapid response and requiring a transfer of the patient to the intensive care unit.
Nurse had misread the glucometer and called the physician, asked for insulin on multiple occasions, and the patient had a severe hypoglycemic event and had to go to the ICU before it was caught.
During the rapid response, we checked the glucose twice, I believe, and the same thing kept popping up, the screen that said glucose greater than 600. The next day is when I received the call that the whole time her blood sugar was actually critically low.
Shortly after this particular incident, another nurse made the same error where the machine it was an actual low value, but the machine read off this alert saying for a high, do X, Y, and Z.
It never came to mind that the glucometer was incorrect. It was probably the worst experience I've ever had in my professional career.
The nurse manager called our human resources department, said, explained the error, this is what happened. We didn't fully understand the ramifications of this piece of equipment and the message that it displayed. And they said, well, I think you need to suspend her until an investigation is completed.
I felt like I was talked to like a 5-year-old. I wasn't talked to like an adult. I mean, I'm a nurse because I come to take care of people, I come to do my job. I'm very passionate about what I do. And for a long time, it really shook me. Like when I came to work, I was scared to like take care of patients, and I was really apprehensive about everything I was doing. I wasn't really confident anymore. It really shook me to the core.
I questioned it with my boss, and she had the suggestion to invite some of the staff from the Human Factors Engineering Department in MI2 to come over and help us at least evaluate the process.
I got a call from the chief nursing officer at one of our hospitals saying that they had had a case. There was a design issue that might have contributed to the case, and they wanted us to take a closer look at it from a human factors engineering, safety engineering standpoint.
It quickly became apparent that there was more to the story than just that she had made a mistake, and that there was a lot more, that it wasn't just her. It was the actions of lots of people that led to this hazard, and it certainly could happen again.
You can't fault any one individual. That's a process problem that needed to be addressed. And the more we thought about it, the more we decided that we needed to fix the process.
The concept of high reliability, the concept of systems problems versus people problems, the concepts involved in human factors engineering. They become very familiar to us, those of us who are talking about them all the time. They're not as familiar to the people on the front lines. Our job is to be able to share that in an effective way, one in which they can actually use the tools and change outcomes.
The leadership, when they saw our analysis of the case, they supported the fact that Annie should not have been disciplined, and they reversed the discipline. And that was doing the right thing. And I think that sent a very important message to the staff at this hospital, that the leadership supports them and takes the systems approach to managing error.
There was a team there, and they were all like nodding, and they were all like validating. They were like, okay, so you know, you're not incompetent. Everything you're saying makes complete sense. And it was just like, it's like I could take a breath and be like, okay, I'm not crazy. And then when I was told by my manager, she pulled me in her office after it, and she was like, we're gonna take away the discipline. She was like, they actually said that we didn't treat you so fairly, and that made me feel better, and that was like a positive aspect of the experience.
We need everybody in our system, actually everybody in the healthcare industry nationally, to understand the systems approach and understand just culture, so that when we have near misses and when we have small little noticed hazards and unsafe conditions that we encounter day to day in our job, that we report it and that we look for trends, and where we can, we fix the system so that the next time that same error or near miss happens, we won't injure a patient.
Okay, friends, so now after viewing the video, what are some of the words that popped up? Can I have some people putting it into the chat box, some of the words that popped up? Okay, just culture. What else?
Ma'am, it won't be all the time an issue. There could be a equipment issue. So when we do
just put in the
RCA,
chat
we
box,
need to
chat box. No discussion, chat box.
not mind to
because
check.
a lot of time. Just the words that you heard during that. You heard just culture. You said system approach. Did you hear learning from mistakes? Process, very good. Structure. So not necessarily the words that were mentioned earlier. So definitely there is always a scope for all of us to learn what exactly is, human factors. If you ask me, after being in healthcare for leadership, yes, exactly. After being in healthcare for almost 40 years, you ask me that, ma'am, are you totally aware of human factors? I will say no. I learned over a period of time. Did I make mistakes? Overlooking human factors. Have I made mistakes? I have made mistakes. We learn every time and every day we are learning. And one of the things that really Indian healthcare system can do is to understand this particular factor thoroughly and focus on that, and I think that is where a lot can be achieved. So we are going to know what is this term called human factor. I'm sure that you also heard the word called engineering during that time. Learn that why nurses should know about human factors, why apply the knowledge of human factors. Now knowing human factors is not good enough. The most important challenge is that are we able to apply them. So I will also discuss some common nursing scenarios where human factors have an interplay. I think that's how we can make it relevant on the topic. Okay, so what does the term human factors mean? So this all the content that we are discussing here is almost all of them are from the WHO patient safety curriculum. So, first of all, human factor means we are acknowledging the universal nature of human fallibility. Fallibility means the human nature of ability that we can make mistake, and we know to err is human, and that is totally against the principle of perfectionism. So maybe we expect perfectionism from everyone, and this is the human factors actually says no. Every human perfection is linked to an error when it threatens where it actually threatens to turn into, because I think that's one of the mistakes sometimes we do about our own self or our system or our department. Oh, nothing can go wrong in my department. My nurses are absolutely brilliant. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. When we have such thought process, it is actually against human factors. So, what does human factor entail? The human factor is actually effective, safe, comfortable human use. That means when we think about it, we are ensuring the human beings who are part of the system, the past part of the delivery, that we are able to understand their behaviors, direct their abilities, understand their limitations, and design tools, process, and machines to ensure the systems and the tasks can be completed safely. That is kind of a nutshell explanation of human factors. So when we are talking about human factors, we are looking at human beings, we are looking at their fallibility, we are not looking for perfectionism, we are looking at their limitations, that things can go wrong. So how can I design my machines, equipments, and process so that the human beings are not going to make mistake, and there are systems and tasks designed to make sure that human behaviors are kept in mind when we are designing that. So that is kind of in a nutshell. So let's go ahead and understand a little bit more about it. So what do you see here? You see here there is a car factory, there's an aircraft, there's nuclear, and then you have healthcare. So what is common in all these? What is common in all these pictures? That all of them are at high risk of fatal consequences. Fatal consequences. That means if something goes wrong, there will be fatalities, death that can happen. So why they are all put together? So now let me ask you, out of these four pictures, which is the one with highest risk of harm? Can you put this in the chat box? Which industry is at highest risk of harm to human being? Jaren says medicine. Would you like to reterm it as healthcare, hospital settings? Or no, all are there, but the highest risk is in healthcare. So let me give you one number that you may like to remember. 1 million flights take off. If 1 million flight take off, one crash may happen. may happen. But in healthcare, WHO says 1 in 300 across the world, 1 in 300 patient can be harmed. 1 in 25 patients will get hospital acquired infection. So you can imagine the unsafe level at which that we work. So that is equally very important. All these industries are working, they have engineers working around human factors, not just the technical engineering part of it, because humans are at the end of managing all these kind of industries. So healthcare, though we call ourselves industry, but we are very far away from the safety benchmark of other industries. So there are fatal consequences. There is recognizing potential from errors. I mean, there is a need to always look out for, potential errors which are there, and can we learn from mistakes, minimize occurrence and effects. So if the airline did not do this on a day-to-day basis and every day, I'm sure that none of us will be confident to get into an aeroplane. None of us will be safely buying a car, because if you knew that every 300 drivers, they will crash and die when you drive a car. I'm sure that you will prefer not to buy a car. And these are car and taking a flight, they are by choice. But when it comes to healthcare, sick people, they definitely come to hospital. Question is, can we make it safer? Is it possible to manage human errors? So that's the question. Is it possible to manage human errors, or is it possible to modify human factors? So here you can see that major US passenger airlines, they have phenomenal safety. There, if you look at the Six Sigma level of safety, it will be more than Six Sigma. It is 7 and 8. And how do they towards this higher and higher safety? Because they rely largely, on voluntary report of incipient hazards. Incipient means about to happen. So everybody is trained to identify. So they put in a lot of processes to make sure, but it is encouraged that they should report. Same time, we should start paying attention. Can healthcare wanted to do? Have they done it? But the same report says country's healthcare system tried to mimic some of these air safety principles, but it has made scant progress. That means little progress. And it is estimated that almost 250,000 unnecessary patient deaths happen in US. Now in India, if you ask me numbers, I don't know. So, what are we looking at? Encourage a culture of reporting and encourage a culture of learning from errors. The moment we stop accepting that, yes, there is a potential to improve ourselves, that's the day that we'll stop improving. So, human factors is study of all factors that makes it easier to do the work the right way. That is one definition. Study of all factors that makes it easier. So the word is makes it easier, and it will be difficult for the human beings in the healthcare system to make errors and harm a patient. So there's another word, human factor and ergonomics. Now they are interchangeably used as per the document. So here what happens is we are looking at what is the task at hand. What is the task that the nurses? I'm going to talk more about nurses than about other healthcare professionals. So what is the task at hand? What's the workplace itself? These are the questions. Can all this be executed safely? So what happens in when you look at human factor and ergonomics is that there is a disbalance between the humans who are involved in delivering care with the workplace, the environment, the tools, equipment, the process. So we all want to ensure patient safety, but we cannot balance that how human factors are having an interplay with all the work that is being done. So we will be looking at some of the real things that could happen in our hospitals in a while. So now why apply human factors principles? So we are going to look at some of the principles that are getting discussed in the document, and plus a little bit more about what are human factor skills. What are these human factor skills? I am very sure all of us have heard all this. Communication, that's the first one, communication. And I think I cannot overemphasize on that. The communication is the top three reason for all sentinel events in healthcare, and it has remained so for many years. It is not the recent thing. Next one, requirement, leadership and teamwork. It is not individual. There has to be a buy-in from the top leader downward, and the team needs to be involved, and there we have to ensure the team is able to cohesively work in the hospital. And the workload management, now the word is very familiar. There is much more to workload management. The workload management itself can become another 1 2 hours discussion, where you are able to be aware of situational awareness. Now this is very very important, because in hospitals every minute the situation can change, and the people involved in that situation, if they're not aware what is happening, they may not be able to pick up any potential threat that is going to be there for patients, families, or the relatives, and even the staff themselves. And lacking that, your decision making can be flawed. So these are all interlinked to each other. So I put some words here that how can we start applying this human factors principle. I would say right from the education. Now, 100 percentage of the answers that I got, that education, nursing education, they do discuss about human factors, but unfortunately, we did not get any of the human factors words in those answers in the chat box. So somewhere there is, the moment we hear human and factors, we kind of tell ourselves, so I know human, I know the factors. But that's a science by itself. In 1 hour, it is not that easy to, dwell with everything, but I'm just trying to make it as practical as possible. So very important from the education space, when the nurses are getting educated from there itself, we have to start discussing human factors. Can you give assignments, activities where when students and nurses, even during induction and onboarding, can human factors be automatically designed to be highlighted? And it is possible. I will give you some examples later, so just be with us. Working hours, do we think working hours has got an impact on human factors, the way they do their work, the way they mistakes can happen? There is enough literature which talks about that anyone who does more than 12 hours duty is at risk of making wrong decisions. They are not completely alert. So what happens when we are getting our nurses to do double duty? When they do evening plus night, that's almost, they don't get, they have been working for 10, 12, 14 days. So in case we are doing it, excuses can be there can be reasons, but then we should be very much aware that we are actually taking a risk of making them make mistakes. It's almost like you haven't slept the whole night and next day you are going to go on a long drive. What do you expect? You have upped the risk of a car crash. So in hospital also we are doing the same thing. When we do shift assignments, are we trying to apply the science of human factors when we look at it? Are we matching? So theoretically, we all talk about, yes, the competencies, the experience of the person. So, but I can tell you from my own experience, it is not always so. It is not always so. How about the duty rosters? I'm sorry, somebody raised hand. Galaxy, can you put it in the chat box? You raised your hands. You can put it in the chat box in case you have any query. Ishita can have a look at what is being asked. Duty rosters. When the duty rosters are being planned, are we aware of human factors? I mean, whatever that we know, are we able to bring that into our awareness when we are doing all these activities? When we are working in a certain environment, are we paying attention that is it good? So let me give you a very simple example. If you are designing a hospital, the environment, and you keep your hand wash station very far, so do we expect all the employees to wash hands the way that they have learned to do? Human factors, they are not going to walk that distance. So that is where the human factor engineering comes in, and you know that you cannot keep these things very far. The emergency medicines, the crash cart, where it is located, can make a difference between resuscitating a patient and not resuscitating a patient. Having the same design of crash cart across the hospitals will decide whether the code blue is going to be successful or not successful, because everyone knows first drawer, first hand side, I will find adrenaline. But if each one will start designing their crash cart their own way, when the team is moving around, it will take extra time. Seconds matter when we are in code blue. So like that, there are hundreds of examples we can look at. So that is why the principle of, sometimes we say lean six sigma or 5s, all these different principles that we bring into hospital, is by and large trying to make life easy for the healthcare providers, so that the risk of harm to our patients is really mitigated. So the common cause of sentinel events, as I told you, is miscommunication. Either no communication, miscommunication, or wrong communication. So it's some form of miscommunication. Nature of task not considered. So I'm very sure that nowadays the acuity based assignment has become the key word, because NABH is asking for that. Now, nature of task when we are assigning nurses to our patients becomes very critical when we are assigning. So not only the nurses, I mean, that is applicable for all manpower, and also the students. When students come to hospital, what is the nature of task that we are assigning? Are they, can that be assigned safely? These are all very important thing. Have we prepared them to give that particular task? Are we taking that responsibility? So now this is a very important thought. Consider not only the vulnerability of patients and families, because we do learn about vulnerability of patients and family, that they are sick when they come inside, we are supposed to understand their emotional status. How about the vulnerabilities of the staff? With what emotional status are they coming in? So I heard about a story of a nurse who made a mistake, and she's supposed to be one of the brilliant nurses, excellent nurses, but she made a mistake of medication, and she also reported. She herself reported. So far, that's what we heard, that when you report yourself, it's a plus sign. But unfortunately, when she was talked to, the people who are investigating, they forgot to ask one thing: what happened that day? Why did she make the mistake? They were trying to look at, how did you make this mistake? How can you make this mistake? You're supposed to be your best nurse. Why did you make this mistake? That was the kind of discussion. But in reality, this particular nurse was going through a very rough patch of financial crisis. She was not able to discuss about that because no one bothered to ask her. Now, these are some of the things that we should really think. Whether we are faculties, whether we are leaders, whether we are in charge, when something is amiss with a person, especially someone who does a decent job and suddenly something changes, are we stopping and trying to ask that, what could be the reason that, they are behaving differently in that time? How did they make the mistake? We have to stop and think. So we are going to have a little bit of discussion. I'm trying to save little time. Let's see. So in summary, I'm just going to summarize what did this document talk about. It's all about human beings. While we cannot eliminate human fallibility, that means to err is human, we can act to moderate and limit risk. It is possible that we can moderate, mitigate, and limit risk. And for that, awareness of human factors and ability to connect this knowledge to real workplace is a must for all leaders, I would say, especially. And know, learn how fatigue, stress, poor communication, disruption, and inadequate knowledge and skill affect health professionals. So that's the time we will stop blaming someone else that, this person has not been taught, or, they don't know. One other very common thing that happens in our hospital, my nurse is giving medication to her 5 patients. If I ask the nurses that, are you interrupted when you are giving medication? Many nurses will say, yes, I'm interrupted. Somebody comes and say, hey, that patient is calling you. Or someone will say, hey, your doctor has come for rounds. So they are not able to complete that high risk procedure, very peacefully. It is disrupted. So are we aware that this can lead to, or when someone is tired, they are, expected to make very high end decisions? Can that happen? Human beings are, now many of us will say, oh my God, what a statement. Human beings are unpredictable and unreliable. That's the reality, because we are human beings, okay? But at the same time, human beings are very creative, self aware, imaginative, and flexible in their thinking. It's the main difference between machine and human beings. Machine is very predictable, very reliable, because they will repeat the same thing they have been designed to do. But human beings are very creative. They are self aware, imaginative, because they can understand what is happening around. My laptop, which is sitting here, and the presentation that I have made, it will run the way it is expected to run. But if there is any little bit variation in the environment, my laptop can never ever pick it up. It is my job to get in and being creative to see that what can I do if there is a disruption in this particular, session. If it's happening, just because I'm a human being, I can creatively think about it. Similarly, in hospital, when something happens, is the nurse or the doctor who is being creative and who are thinking critically and making decisions which are right for the patient. So human factors is actually acknowledging that these things can have an interplay, and we will pay attention to that. This is what is very important. Now there's one more statement, this is also very interesting. Human beings are also distractible, which is both a strength and weakness. Now, this is a very interesting statement. What does that mean? We get distracted very easily. So we are aware of it. So when I am giving medication, I should not be distracted, but knowing that I'm distractible, so I will pay double focus on the medication. But at the same time, it's a strength. That means when I'm giving medication, I am able to feel if something is going around. So I am with a patient B, something happens to my patient A, I am able to pick up. But a computer or a monitor which is put on patient B will talk about patient B, it will never talk about patient A. But a nurse who is standing there will be able to pick up if something is going wrong with patient A. That's the strength of human being. It is also a distraction because it's a weakness. So we need to be aware. So our nurses should know that this is a strength and a weakness. All these, terminologies or the sentences that you saw here are real things about human being, but we all can rise above it. Now, the question is, are we discussing enough with our young nurses, working nurses, the leaders? Are we discussing enough? Even leaders are fallible. No leader is perfect. But can this leader learn from every event, every incident? Can the leader be patient with their team members when they come up and say that this is what has happened? Can you pay right attention and right time to decide. So, in some of the trainings that I do, anytime when there is a problem, the kappa will start with training. And let me tell you, probably training is the least, effective preventive action. That may be one of the things, but most important will be to discuss what were the human factors involved. So the person or the team that is involved can think about risk mitigation. How can we prevent this next time? So I would like to bring this picture once again. Last time also I brought this up. This is just to remind all of us that in hospital, sentinel events are almost always reported, but not the near miss and no harm events. And airline industry actually works so seriously on potential harmful and near miss. The moment somebody identifies that this could have led to a problem, there is a serious focus by the industry. And the other thing that they do is, suppose a particular model, I learned about this Airbus. There was something called a special cable which was found to be wrong. During the routine inspection before takeoff, they found that there was something like, I think it's called a Chandler cable or something. Some cable was not right. What happened? Within the next few days, every single Airbus in the world was checked for that particular cable. Now, can we claim to do that? We don't even do that between two ICUs also in the same hospital. We never learned from another hospital's problem that happened in the OT. Little bit sensitization might remember for few days, but I don't know how many of us seriously get into discussion only what is our risk, what is the hidden risk in our hospital. How can we mitigate this human factors risk? Understand human limitations, not capabilities. Acknowledge the human limitations that this can happen. Fatigue, stress, poor communication, disruptions can lead to errors. We must admit that. Inadequate knowledge, lack of skills is also another factor that can lead to harm. But then it is for us, the people who are educating the nurses, the people who are training the nurses, the people who are supervising the nurses, are we carrying enough knowledge and skills to train and groom the future nurses? Question to be asked. Are we ensuring that their knowledge and skill levels are matched to the task that they are being given? And please understand, human beings can misperceive situations. It's a natural thing because sometimes you see things in the wrong color, and that is something that can happen with anyone. That's why we say errors. To err is human because it was just a misjudgment. And that happens also in airline industry also. Once in a blue moon, when something happens, that could be because of the misjudgment. The fact is that error is the downside of having a brain. That means a brain that can see things, think of things, and decide on things, and then agree that this is what I am seeing. So, because we have that brain which is very flexible, can think, can make decisions. So, that's why it's good that we all have a brain. Computers have a brain, but they're trained to think in only one way. So, whatever we put in, that is what will come out. It's kind of a garbage in, garbage out. But human beings is not like that. We can think, critically think, and make a decision. So while we expect that from every human being, we also have to admit the human fallibilities and limitations. Now, this is an interesting statement I found, and I have seen this happen in my career. Low levels of stress can be counterproductive. Now, working in healthcare, looking after patients can be stressful, and it is expected to be stressful because we are taking care of another human beings, and human beings, as a caregiver, we are not machines, and as a care receiver, they are also not machines. You cannot punch buttons and say, okay, this is what's going to happen for the next 8 hours. That's not going to happen. But we know, I have seen it, when the hospital is very, very light, there's not much happening, everybody's happy, not much of work. I used to find the mistake rates used to be higher. because the alert buttons become loose, I guess. You would also see that. So that's why this statement says low levels of stress can be counterproductive. So a certain level of stress environment in hospitals are supposed to be good for patients, and I have seen it in my entire career. Even as a ICU in charge, I have seen that when we were super duper busy, I can see all my people are extra alert, extra aware, because they know that, oh, mistake can happen. Let me be very, very careful. But when we were very light, everybody becomes light, and I know that that time mistakes can happen, and I have seen it happen. Yes, thanks, Lata. She is also telling, yes, it is true. And I used to tell my nurses as I assume, I'll say, hey guys, we are not too busy. So now let's be very careful that, we don't make a mistake by mistake. So this is very important to be kept in mind. So that is risk mitigation. Then let's continue with the risk mitigation more. So on the right hand side, you see that communication, leadership, and human factors right on top as the reason for sentinel events. This is from ECRI. This is an organization in the US. Every year they study all the sentinel events. So can you see that human factors as the topmost reason for sentinel events? So when if we have to check in and say that what are the things that we can do, please mute yourself. Avoid relying on memory. Don't. Can you just mute yourself? Thank you. What I was trying to say was that we have to remember that we should not allow everyone to rely on their memory. So that is why cue cards and reminders and easy access to small, reminders for them, what to do, checklist, all these things we put in place to ensure that we are not putting everything on our memory. Review and simplify processes. So let me tell you, I am also guilty of designing processes that could have been complicated earlier in my life as an administrator, but I learned very quickly that the more simplified processes I design, it is more easy for the people to adhere and execute. Standardize common process and procedures. Now this is very important. How do you standardize processes, common process and procedure? That's why we all have a procedural manual and SOPs, etc., so that everybody is doing, understanding and learning the same way. So routinely use checklists. So that's a recommendation, but there is a danger here in healthcare because checklists can become tick lists. So we don't want to do that. So ensure that checklists, they don't become tick list, and decrease reliance on vigilance. That means the more automation can happen, and you are not expecting the individual to remain vigilant for everything. If you reduce that and bring in technological solution, your safety net will become stronger. So this is very important to keep these tips in mind when we are running our departments. So, one of the things that is mentioned in this WHO curriculum is that I am safe checklist. So, this is a checklist that every single pilot has to check themselves before they start taking the steering of the aeroplane. Now, do we do a self check, all of us, before we start caring for the patient? I doubt. No one told me when I was a nurse that I should do my self check. We did talk about self care, but we did not talk about self check. So, this is called I am safe checklist. That means ask yourself that am I sick? Do I have any symptoms that I can be putting other people at risk? Am I on medications? Have I been taking any medications, over the counter drugs, because I am taking medication? In airline, it has a different connotation because if they have taken multiple medications and prescription medication, non-prescription medication, it can make their decision making fussy. Now, can that also imply to nurses and doctors? Yes. Stress. Am I under psychological pressure from the job, worried about financial matters, health problems, family discord? Can all this happen with all of us? Yes. Now, I am guilty of telling my nurses earlier in my career that, leave all your problems at home, and, when you enter the hospital, just leave everything there. Today, I will say, no, it is not that easy. Trying not to leave, but trying to be aware is very important, that, I am today having under stress. So you should talk about it and say, maybe you cannot look after a very high risk patient. Maybe, can I talk about it? Can my leader understand that? Or will they make fun of it? Or they'll say, oh ho, you are having problem, huh? I spent 20 years in nursing with all the problems. I never harmed a patient. Now, are we having such an attitude is a question to ask. Now, alcohol. If you asked me some years ago, 10, 20 years ago, oh, alcohol in nursing. But I have come across at least one real incident where a nurse leader was terminated because of alcohol problem. Now, if you had been drinking within 8 hours or within 24 hours, if you knew that your pilot had a nice party yesterday night and he had been drinking and now he is going to be flying your aeroplane, if someone told you that, you will say, okay, hello, hi, let me get down, I don't want to take this flight. Now, how many of us ask that for all the caregivers? When I say caregivers, nurses, doctors, all kinds of people who are involved in caring for the patient, do we ask ourselves? Obviously, we don't want to create a checklist and start asking people. But can we be aware of it? Fatigue, am I tired? Not adequately rested. Maybe you had some family problem. The whole night you had not slept, and next day you are in the ICU with ventilator patients. Can you be trusted? It's not your fault. But are we ever thinking about it? Can my ICU nurse come and tell me, ki, ma'am, yesterday night, the whole night I have not slept. I'm really feeling tired, that I'm worried that, I might make a mistake, or not even make a mistake, fail to identify something that's going on wrong with the patient, because your brain is fuzzy, you can't see it happening. Can I discuss about that? These are the questions to be asked. Now, the last one is very, very important. Am I adequately nourished? I have been telling my nurses over so many years, they will land up for duty without having anything to eat. They will just, get up, brush and rush and come for this very heavy morning duty. So when that happens, are we taking a big risk of, our brain not being so alert and, able to make the right decisions for our patients? We are definitely taking a risk. So, friends, conclusion, I can talk about this for, hours together, but I think it's just a quick look on the WHO curriculum, and the sensitization that we are doing is to get your people to think about it. The curriculum is easily available to be downloaded. You can always read more, understand. So I'm bringing back the same slide that I had shown before. So, in nutshell, I will say we should educate our nurses. We should retrain them. Retrain means not them, me too. I am also part of the same nursing profession who needs to be retrained and sensitized that there is something called human factors, and always keep in mind the human factors. When I'm the leader, when I'm designing things, am I paying attention to all these things that I discussed earlier? So I'm not going to get into that in details because I already discussed in the previous slide. So plan education with human factors and patient safety. Not only education, plan activities around that. So when you send students to patient area, can you tell them, can you figure out, what are the human factors? Are you seeing people who are tired? Are you seeing people who are overworked? Are you seeing same kind of equipments, or you are seeing different types of equipment? So that way they will learn that, the consistency of processes, equipments are important. So when we are buying syringe pumps, as leaders, are we recommending to buy same syringe pump so our nurses are very comfortable using the same syringe pump, or are we very happy to have 4, 5, 6 brands in the hospital without knowing that can lead to more harm or errors? Consider not only the vulnerability of patients and family, but also healthcare providers. Design processes to mitigate human factors. So, all these human factors, when we are designing working hours, shift assignment, duty rosters, environment, reporting, what time they go home, all these things are very important. Willingness to admit and learn from errors is extremely important. Now, this is a snippet from the same curriculum. Nurses too tired to be safe. So what they are saying here is that such a shift that exceed 12 hours make more mistakes than those who work fewer hours. This is the conclusion of a federally funded study, July-August issue of Journal of Health Affairs. Now, is there a government funded study for all this in India? Sorry, I was not able to figure out something. So the question is that it takes small, careful strategies to reduce human errors by focusing on human factors. So I'll come back to this video. I have a small video to show you. I will come back to it. Let me see if there is something in my next one. Okay, and the video will be the last one I'll be playing. So I would say thank you before that, and I'll say see you in March last Saturday. That time, our next patient safety fellow, Ms. Ishita Chanta, will be discussing understanding systems and the effect of complexity of patient care. So there are 11 topics in the curriculum that we will be addressing one by one, topic wise. And then in December 2022, there will be a inter-chapter quiz on the topics which are covered. This to ensure that, people are taking interest and learning and, participating. So now let's look at this little video.
I'll never forget the day that my 4-year-old son Logan almost died in my arms in Royal University Hospital. We were sitting on his hospital bed when he let out a scream. And I knew that he shouldn't be screaming because he shouldn't have been in any pain.
A bag of potassium that was a concentrated, heavy concentration bag was hung instead of a diluted bag.
As a pharmacist, I know that when the concentration of potassium is too high, that it can burn. So I knew when I looked behind me and saw potassium hanging that the concentration Logan had been given was too high for him, and as a result could have killed him. I immediately locked his IV and I started to cry and shake with all the chaos going on around us.
I went over to the bedside and saw that she clearly was upset about something.
And he looked right at me and he said, "I have no idea what you're talking about, but I trust you and I know that you know there's something wrong. I'm here to help. Let's figure this out."
We rolled Logan down to the OR waiting room where we met up with the anesthetist. And come to find out, he didn't even know that Logan had a kidney condition. He wouldn't have required us to increase the potassium if he had known that in advance.
I firmly believe that everybody that day was working with my son's best intentions. I work in the system myself, and I saw errors. I've been involved in errors before, but the way Saskatoon Health Region handled this error has been incredible to watch. Their openness to understand that there are safety defects in the system and their openness to work with me and to try to fix them have been unlike anything I've experienced in my own healthcare career to this point.
The most important thing that I learned from this whole experience was that, first of all, we as healthcare providers need to talk to each other. We need to be able to listen to the families. If we are in a situation where we're not sure what's going on and we're not comfortable with the situation, we can't be scared to just push the stop button and figure out together what's really gone wrong.
Safer Every Day is a 90-day initiative where we are focused on improving safety for patients and our staff. One of the areas of focus is on team communication. We're really working on how to help teams communicate, including the patient and family, in a way that keeps everyone safe. The other area we're really focused on is how do we support both the patient family, the staff, and the physicians who are involved in events like Logan's so that they feel supported after the event, that we all learn from the event, and that we work together to put in initiatives or improvements that make our care safer every day.
I was devastated when I heard Logan's story, but I also know that unless we figure out how to work differently and build safer systems, that what happened to Logan could happen again.
So, friends, the question is, can we talk like this hospital? Can we admit, can we discuss openly what went wrong and participate in fixing the process, not the person? That's a big question to be asked to ourselves. When I look for such videos to share with all of you, it's very difficult to find something that is being shared from any Indian hospitals. So we are miles away from doing what is right for our patients. All these sessions are being done to sensitize that. We would love to hear stories from you. So right now, Association of Nurse Executives India is inviting case studies without telling us the hospital, patient name or anything, where error you might have witnessed, and then we can talk about it, what went right and what went wrong. And, learning from errors is one of the most powerful ways one can always remember that this is something I should not do and this is something I should do, because if it happened to them, it could happen to me, or it can happen to my patients. So that is my last request for the day. Let us share our case studies, and if you have such case studies, please feel free to contact any one of us, any one of your chapter heads, any one of us. Tell us that you have story. We are collecting them. We are hoping to publish it all together so that students, nurses, all of us can learn. And they are stories from India, not from elsewhere. So we really hope that we can work together and create a document from where we can share and learn, supporting each other. So I hope that this 1 hour you have, at least, you have understood what are, human factors, and probably in your head right now, if you are a leader of any kind, you are actually thinking, this is something I'm going to do from now on. If that is done, even for one thing that you have decided to do, this session of 60 minutes of discussion on human factors and how to apply them will be, blessed, and we will be extremely grateful. Thank you so much to everyone for being here, and thanks a lot. I have another meeting, so I am not able to stay here for longer, but I will still give a few minutes for discussion. So I will stop recording at the moment. Thank you so much. If someone has anything to share, I can take about 3 to 4 minutes for that discussion. So I stop recording so we can discuss.